We just had a team of executives from Chick-fil-A come to our facility. They wanted to learn how did we take our business and grow it 6 times in a 5-year period of time. It was clear to them that we're an organization that's moving as a team, growing as a team. Everybody knows what the objectives are daily.
Well, welcome to the podcast, PJ.
Thanks for having me, Brad. I appreciate it.
Very excited to have you on. We have PJ Gruetzmacher on, and he is the CEO of Summit Automation USA. And, it's not too often that we have one of our industry partners, one of our key trade partners that we work with on every project. And so this is an episode I was greatly looking forward to.
Oh, well, thank you very much for inviting us, so do I. I look forward to it as well.
Well, I think what's unique where I want to start, you have unique history. From the little history I know, PJ, from us speaking offline, is your background is aerospace, and I want you to kind of walk us through that, that career path of, travel, young family, and it's pretty rare when you sell a company, you're going to come back on board, and we'll get into Summit Automation, but walk us through your background a little bit as far as aerospace and how that played a role in your career.
Sure. When I first graduated high school, my parents were not resourceful, meaning we didn't have a lot of cash and very ignorant about going to school and things like that. So I followed my brother's footsteps and joined the army, saw the world, got a chance to see a lot around the world, and quite frankly, you realize you get a much better appreciation for how things are here in the US when you get a chance to go into other countries. And so I have a deep appreciation for the United States, and being a veteran, that plays a lot into a lot of my decision making as well. But when I graduated, after I finished the Army, I got my undergrad and graduated here in Arizona, and went to work for what is now called Honeywell.
Hmm.
But back then it was called Garrett, then it was Allied, then it was Allied Signal, and then it became Honeywell. Allied Signal actually purchased Honeywell and kept the name. And so while I was in aerospace, when I first got into aerospace, found out that there were a lot of great opportunities in the aerospace world, and I took advantage of them. Learned a lot, learned how to be an entrepreneur in a multi-billion dollar company, and so this isn't new to me to be an entrepreneur, but what ended up happening is that over your career, you start getting promoted and you start running businesses, and eventually you become the CEO of a company. And I was the CEO of LAI International, and we were up for sale. So I took a $6 million business, grew it to 86 million, and we flipped it, and it was a good experience up until the final end, uh, because sometimes when you sell to a private equity firm or your private equity base, not everything goes perfect, and it's not rosy for everyone. But all along this time, my wife and I, we have 5 children, and unfortunately, she was pretty much the primary uh, mother and parent around the house, and I was absent, and that weighed on us pretty hard. And over 7 years of traveling Sunday night through Thursday, we looked at each other when it came time to sell the business and says, "Are we going to do this gig again, or are we going to try something different?" And we decided at that point, since I'm so comfortable of buying other companies and then buying good companies and making them great, why don't we do it for ourselves? So with our savings, we went out there and we rolled the dice, and we actually sourced 86 different companies. Literally went through, did an algorithm, identified all these companies, and all of them were aerospace and defense-based companies, because that's 33 years in the aerospace industry. That's typically what you gravitate to. However, a mutual friend of ours came to me and said, "PJ, I think you should buy this company, Summit." And I told him, I said, "I don't know anything about doors. I don't know anything about, I mean, that's not my thing." And he goes, "PJ, you didn't know anything about engines. You didn't know anything about avionics, wheels and brakes, power generation system. You didn't know any of that stuff until you got into it, right?" I'm like, "Okay, fair point." So literally came, kicked the tires on the company, saw that it was a good company and it had a lot of runway, to grow it and to make it a great company. So my wife and I decided this was the path we were going to go.
What's really interesting, I do want to get into, this decision making of narrowing it down to Summit, which we'll get into. But you made a comment, PJ, as you think about what you learned, what it meant to be an entrepreneur. As you think about that, especially taking your company from, I think you said 6 to like 80 million, somewhere
Yep.
around those lines. When you think of that definition of an entrepreneur, what do you feel that you know today, going through that journey?
Well, I'll tell you, you need to have a really good base of resources. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm not talking about financial. I'm talking about human capital. I'm talking about having a network of people, trusted network of people that you can rely on, industry experts and things like that. And I really felt that I had really good network of people when we decided to go with Summit to be able to lean on and to be able to talk to prior to the acquisition, but then even after the acquisition, being able to have a trusted network of people that didn't want to take anything from me. They literally wanted to offer. So offer advice, offer counsel, things like that. And quite frankly, just listening uh, gave us a wealth of information and allowed us to be able to swing for the fences here at Summit.
What's interesting about that is I think about that network of people, and I understand, especially as you have developed your career, 33 years in aerospace, you have a lot of contacts, a lot of resources, even these contacts that open the door to Summit early on when you're building. I think you said it was LAI, right? International.
Yes.
How did you build that network of people? Because and as I share my own experience, I look at you know the construction industry, it's low barrier for entry, right? A lot of people have experience. They want to go out. They want to start their own subcontracting company, their own general contracting company. There's not a lot of resources, right? How to run your business, how to operate, cash flow, and all the things that go into running a successful business. And you have to really reach out to other people and hopefully find mentors and people that are willing to educate you and train you and give you advice so that you don't make the same pitfalls maybe they did early in their career. As you look back, I mean, this is pre-social media, pre-cell phones, right? I mean,
Hmm.
when you're building LAI International, how did you find that contact base? How did you build that relationship with others in that industry to help accelerate, the company had at the time?
I will tell you, listening to your customers is always the first point. Is just understanding what the customers want and need. Understand the difference between wants and needs as well, and but then always make sure that whatever you do, you're satisfying a need. If you can satisfy the wants at the same time, that's a great thing. Well, while you're listening to the customers probably already know the answers or they know people in the industry that you can reach out to. I'll tell you, there's a great set of resources. Just leveraging your relationship with your banks, your personal bank, um, understanding or talking with your CPAs, uh, getting in touch with the local universities. Like, for example, Summit, we partner with ASU Polytech University. Well, that allows me access to the entire um, staff at ASU. So if I have a situation or a challenge, I go to them and I ask them, "Hey, have you ever seen this before? Is there somebody on your staff that knows something about this?" And it's amazing how much they can provide you. We bank with Western Bank, Western State Bank, and when I go to our key guy at Western State, if he doesn't know an answer, he puts me in touch with somebody who does. And so you end up with this kind of like a trusted network of free advisors that if you just pay attention to what they say, not everyone is right. I'm not saying that you just blindly go and do it. You got to do your own due diligence. And now with, the internet being the way the internet is, you can validate, trust but verify. And so whether it was LEI or the company before that, which was Pacific Scientific, that was a company that I took that was the $65 million business, grew to 330. We flipped that one. The one before that was a $3 million business, grew to 77 million. Same type of thing. These are all types of, and I've come across, I think last count, I had 18,000 contacts in my contact database. So if I don't know someone, I know somebody who knows someone. So, so I will also say that being a parent, I often tell my children, hey, if you're stuck, reach out. Whether my wife Brenda or one of us knows something, maybe a little bit about what you're talking about, but we also know people. So family is a great leverage point as well to be able to learn as well.
I love that life experience, play with your children. It's funny. I think back of, when I was a teenager, a know-it-all, I think, as many of us teenagers are, and we don't think our parents are that cool and don't want to listen to them. It's funny how quickly you're humbled as, you mentioned how important it was for you to kind of live outside the U.S. for a time. I was fortunate to live in Argentina for a couple of years, out of high school. And I quickly realized, a couple things. One, the gratitude for living in the U.S., right? And having lived in another
Mhm.
country, no matter how amazing the people were and the culture and the food and everything I was fortunate to learn through that time of my life. But the appreciation for the U.S. is one, but more importantly, the life experience. As I got older and became a father, and in my career, how much I lean on my father and my mother for advice and their life experience, and to open that door and communicate. With 5 children. Even if I'm sure you can attest, they may not listen day one. I'm sure at some point they've tapped into that resource they have as a dad. So,
That's very, very accurate. Very accurate. But I will say though, it's a short story. Hopefully, it'll be a short story. But there was a point when my oldest boy, Joe, he turned 13, and I remember him pushing the, the button. And I won't say what button, but the button. And he pushed the button, and he turned to me and he says, Dad, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I looked at him and I just thought to myself, okay, I'm going to let that one go. Then around 23, um, he called me up and he asked me one day and he says, "Hey, Dad, um, I need your advice." I said, "Do you want my opinion or do you want my advice?" He goes, "Well, kind of both." I gave it to him, and his response back to me was, "Dad, man, you're actually really pretty smart." I said, "Oh, thank God you said that." Because I have been taking this pill. I've been going, I can't wait until Monday when I have my next doctor's follow up. And I've been taking this pill for mental acuity and all this other stuff for the last 10 years, ever since you said I was stupid. And my doctor is going to be flabbergasted. He's going to wait. This is going to be fantastic for him to hear about this. And he goes, "Really?" I said, "No, you dumbass." So, so it's just one of those things that, yeah, children have a way of, especially firstborns, tend to have
Yeah.
a way of pushing buttons. But it's funny that the second, third, fourth, and fifth they learn from those from the oldest. So it worked out really good. And of course, we're best friends now, and he asks for advice all the time, and I'm happy to give it. But and that's the same thing. We have a team of people. We're a small company. We've got 20 people, and most of the people that we've got hired here are younger than us. My wife and I, own the business together. So. And we treat them like family. We treat them like kids, like our kids. And today, somebody was talking about registration on their vehicle and things like that. I'd be happy to help him, because
Hmm.
he's in a zone that he's not very comfortable with, and we're always willing to help. And it's not just them; it's also our partners, our industry partners that we work with. We get calls every day that says, "Hey, PJ, how do you market in this environment? What kind of advertising campaign do you think we should do over here?" Things like that, and we volunteer that information without any expectation of receiving anything back. It's just purely giving. So, I believe in do unto others as you want done unto you, and live by the golden rule and all that other stuff. And I believe in it, and we run our business that way. So
Yeah, there's something to be said. I mean, as you've brought value to your family, to your business, to the company culture, to your trusted network, and even those that are reaching out, PJ. I mean, it shows. I mean, there's something about that positive energy and karma. I'm a huge believer in that. I think there's a lot of value to that. I think the successful people I've met in my career, interviewed on this podcast, really all share that same methodology. I mean, I would imagine sometimes you give an advice, and that advice may not mean a difference in your paycheck or a bump in your business, but how those relationships evolve over time and how those are reciprocated to you, make all the difference.
I completely 100% agree.
As you look back, it's interesting. You had when I was thinking about reaching out to your network, similar industry professionals, and you even brought up, hey, reach out to my bank, right? Western States Bank in their context, reaching out to university, to maybe students, professors, the tech industry that's there at ASU, for example. How has tapping into other industries played a role in your growth, in your relationship, in your marketing strategies, and developing your business?
I will say that, you know, um, our business is catered to really the 1% of the one percenters. I mean, as you know, you support everyone, but your finer touch is, above. It's a very elite organization, and you work with very extremely demanding customers, and rightfully so. They're spending their hard-earned money that they've earned and they fought for, on their future homes and things like that. Well, the same thing applies here at Summit, where we leverage our relationships with builders, with architects, with designers, with if you think of the door manufacturers, we partner with all of them. And then what we try to do is we align our technology and we align all of our breakthrough techs around what they're looking to do. So by having open and honest and frequent conversations with our network of people in our space, it allows us to basically unblank the canvas and to align ourselves in a way that, while it may not benefit us today, it could benefit us 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And so by comparing ourselves, and we do this every day. We compare ourselves against the best brands that are out there. When we talk about brand recognition, we talk about how do you get that? How do you develop your own advertising campaign? We do that through benchmarking. So we understand what other industries are doing, and if you benchmark against those, and I'm not saying you blindly go out and just do it. What I'm saying is that by benchmarking, you understand what they've done and you understand how has it helped them, and then learn to scale it appropriately for your own business. And so that's what we've done. In fact, even how we run our business is based on our Summit operating system, so the SOS, where we took concepts that 50, $100 billion organizations use. And by having the ability to work in UTC and at Honeywell and different very large Danaher business system as well, learning all of these different business systems and then applying them to a multi-million-dollar business, but scaling it so that my team can get their heads wrapped around it, and then driving accountability and making sure that goals and responsibilities are well aligned, and everybody every day at daily management, they were self-report on themselves. So we took that from industry best practices, we boiled it down a little bit, we made it relatable specifically to Summit, but we're constantly benchmarking. In fact, we just had a team of executives from Chick-fil-A come to our facility, and these are operators as well as corporate. They came to our facility, and the reason why they did is they wanted to learn, how did we take our business and grow it 6 times in a 5 year period of time? How is that possible? And we walked them through our operating system. We walked them through our strategic planning process, our annual goals and objectives. We walked them through the whole thing. When they walked the floor and they saw how everybody understood how they fit into the overarching game plan, And they did that through asking questions and things like that. It was clear to them that we're an organization that's moving as a team, rowing as a team. Everybody knows what the objectives are daily. And I do the whole measure small, miss small. I also, you know, so if you can focus that way and you can get your team rallied around that, that works. The only reason why that happened is because we took that from industry leaders, other industries, and brought it to Summit.
It's incredible. I mean, how does that door even open where you're meeting with Chick-fil-A executives? Because although they're coming to shout at you, I'd imagine, just like we've been speaking about, there's information that you're going to gather from them that, speaking with someone that's completely outside your industry.
Well, I will tell you, it started with a phone call. They called me to automate their front doors at their corporate headquarters. And so they have a nanowall system, two of
Hmm.
them, that are at their corporate headquarters, and they asked if we had a solution. And and these are heavy doors. These are, very, very large. They're beautiful doors, but they're large, and they needed help, and they wanted us to be able to dial in a system around their system. And because we're very nimble and we have engineers on our staff, we're the manufacturer of our systems. We don't buy stuff off the internet, throw it in a box, and here you go. We design our stuff with a goal in mind that says simplicity, about excellence. It's got to be, the four R's: relevant, reliable, repeatable, and recent technology. So it's got to be relevant. There's got to be a need. It's got to be recent. Hey, if you're not offering the latest and greatest technology, you're behind the times. It's got to be repeatable. If somebody's going to use the system, it has to work the same every single time, and it has to be reliable. Every time you touch the button, the system works. So we found, as part of our corporate culture, that if you focus on the four R's and you develop your organization to respond to that, people gravitate to it. Well, when we went out, and I went out and I trained our local, we call them master manufacturing reps, most local MMR that's in Atlanta, and we went to the corporate headquarters and we understood what the customer was looking for. We were able to get that done, and they were so ecstatic about the communication, about the project management, about all of those different things. That's what wowed them about sending a team out here to check us out, because they interviewed me. It was amazing. They even put me on the red couch, that they do the interviews for
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A, and they walked me through a whole series of questions and things like that, and it impressed them to the point that they wanted to send a team out and check out our facility. So it worked out great.
That's amazing. And you kind of touched on this, and I'd love you to give kind of an intro of Summit Automation, what you do, what you specialize in, especially as you partner with us here at AFT over the years.
Oh, sure. So if you think of Summit Automation, we bring doors to life. That's our tagline. We bring doors to life. So if you think of these door systems and windows and hinge doors, so we
Hmm.
now do multiple different things. So when we first bought the company, it was four motors. Took two off the market until we redesigned them, because I don't ever want to deliver a system that I'm going to get back. So we upgraded all of our materials. We made sure that everything, so that when we sell it, we know it's going to work. In fact, most of our systems outlast the house. So let alone the door system, they outlast the house. So when they're installed properly, and the doors are maintained properly, they're going to run forever. So, with that said, what we ended up doing is, so when we bought the company, again, it was around the veteran-owned theme. My wife and I own it, so it's also women-owned. We're It was all about family. So two of our five children work here at the company. One of them is our design engineer, and the other one is our training and tech support and installation manager. And not that we install, but we train people to do installations. Um, so so we developed the business and around the theme that says, hey, we want to help people be able to operate their door systems. We also want to make sure that the architects understand there's no more limitations to size. It used to be, hey, how do you operate a door? How do you move a door, especially if you make these doors 12, 15, 20, 25 feet tall, triple
Mhm.
glaze, 4,000 pounds each. And we all have cars. We all have cars. We all have four wheels on our cars. But every day when I pull up to a stoplight, I make sure I jump out of the car when it turns green and I push my car through the intersection. Now, of course not. I use the motor. I use the motor. Well, guess what? That's the same thing here. The doors, the doors are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We don't want the architects to have any more limitations. So size is no longer an issue. The manufacturers of the door systems had developed their technology so well that they're actually able now, their ovens to bake out the glass. They can go 25 feet tall, 10-foot wide panels at a shot. And you start thinking about that. That's a lot of mass, and you put that on a track, and now you got to be able to move it, not just one panel, five, six, seven, 10 panels. They get really heavy really fast. So but we've gone beyond just the multi-slide type business. We do radius doors, pocketing doors, stacking doors. Those are all basic multi-slides. And if you recall, we also did that one where we had the bar top
Mhm.
that married up to the pocketing door at your house. I won't say the name of the property, but at
Yeah.
one of your projects, it was fantastic how it was able to come together. But we've now also gone into lift up or tilt up windows, servery doors. So we can actuate a panel so that it just tilts up 90 degrees. To now we do pivot doors. And then, of course, we now do guillotine windows. In fact, we just did the first ever 18-foot long 400-pound panel that it was only like 2.5 feet tall, but it passed in front of another panel. So I guess that's a single hung, and it went up in front of this other one, and we automated that one perfectly. And so we've done all kinds of different stuff. Oh, doors in the floor. Gotta love this one. Somebody actually took their home, and they decided that they're going to tilt up their floor inside their master bedroom closet, and it gained access to downstairs to where they have a safe room. So if they ever needed to, they could actuate the floor, go down, lock it in, and they're protected. So doors in the floor. So there's really no limitation. We got people asking us to do all kinds of stuff. There's a Batcave thing that's coming up that we're going to be working on. We're working on this castle project that's here in Phoenix. We've got a lot of different cool projects that we're working on. So there's really no limitation. If a door moves or a window moves, we can pretty much automate it.
I love this because just to get some context, when this podcast does go live, I will publish, that video just to show from our Arcadia Lights project. We won't show
Yeah.
the client name, but yes, to your point, it was one of our most complicated window installs. In fact, the window manufacturer has used that video and that design all across the country because it's such a complicated design. I mean, this entire structure was built off site to make sure it performed. And what was challenging for Paul, of course, who that works with
Oh
me,
yeah.
and you have this pass-through countertop, which is like a bar top to the outside. So you have these windows that all pocket, and they connect to a full height French door, we'll call it, that pockets into the wall. So you have a pocketing door connecting pocketed windows that meets in the middle, right? And
Yeah.
so challenging, building the structure, getting cabinetry installed early so that we can get templates and, all there was so much coordination to just that configuration. And just to the left of that, we had these massive corner sliders that
Yeah.
again, cantilevered corner where they meet it. It's just amazing what you guys have done. And we've had, I think of our modern sunset project that I believe is 40 feet wide, right? That,
Yeah.
you have
That's a
automated.
big one.
You've done some really complicated, designs for us.
Yeah, we've the largest one so far that I have personally witnessed is 102 feet, 12-foot tall panels.
Oh
It's a
my
big door.
God.
That's a big door. That's a big door. And we ran that one with two Everest motors, and just pulled it like and what I love is we did that thing 5 years ago, and not a single call. We did this one at Princeton, which was triple glaze, 50 feet long, 15-foot tall system that was
So heavy. It's
just,
so
it
heavy.
is heavy. It is so heavy. And we pulled that with our two K2 motors and Everest motors, and it just pulled it. And again, not a call. I love it. I love not getting calls, but sometimes you get. It's kind of like the Maytag guy. Eventually you're like, hey, I'm kind of curious how that door's going, and nobody's calling, so we have to call it, just double check, make sure everything's good, and it is. And it's funny. While we're on that, is that there's other people that are out there that automate stuff, and I gotta tell you. I think we pulled 40 systems from other manufacturers out of the door systems because they don't fail, or they fail, and they fail constantly. And we get the call, and it's just awareness. People don't know, and somebody knows somebody, and they sell it. But eventually, maybe with the help of this podcast and other social media type things and such, that we'll get the word out there and make sure everyone knows that we've got the best in class and the most affordable. And it's got the highest repeatability and longevity that you'll ever see in the industry. So,
Walk us through what it requires from a general contractor in the sense that, this is a standard for us. I believe we've used you pretty much on every single project, at least one door that we're doing,
yeah.
typically the great room, sometimes the master, sometimes the kitchen, depending on the configuration. It's something that is, to your point, it's a luxury item, but it's not, in my opinion, not a budget buster. As I'm looking through the project, it's typically one that always stays. It's not value engineered by the client. And I think what's more important, to your point, PJ, is that not only are you local, but you're not only national, but worldwide. You're doing stuff all over the world, internationally, doing stuff all over the country. And that's why for our listeners, as they reach out to you, as they're specifying your product in their home, from access to, where we have to install the motors, the size of the equipment, what should a builder or architect or designer know, when specifying Summit Automation?
So there's a few things. So in order to keep the costs down, and to make sure that the install goes perfectly and keep the installation costs down as well, if we can keep a stud bay either to the left or to the right, if it's a stacking door, if we can keep a stud bay open, because one motor can operate both sides of the doors, unless you start getting into those 50-foot, 50-foot long, 15-foot triple pane things, then you typically revert to two motors. But if you have the ability to be able to maintain a stud bay to the left or to the right, that works really well. If you have a pocketing system, if you just extend the pocket an extra 12 inches, even though the motor is only 7.5 inches, the reason why we say 12 inches is because if you're trying to hold a 25-pound motor and you're trying to use a screw gun to put the four screws in, if you don't have, you do that a couple times, you realize, man, I could use a little bit of, I don't want to put two extensions on my screw gun to get it up in there. So give the guy a fighting chance, right? So those are the things like pocketing, but even if somebody has a glass curtain wall to the left and a glass curtain wall to the right, and it's all door, and then maybe even they have a window transom up above, but they have a steel post and an I-beam across it. Our motors can be converted into a horizontal motor through what we call a K2 conversion, and it's just a different configuration where the motor can literally go up inside the I-beam, and then you put your brake metal over the I-beam, and that hides it, and meanwhile you still get the exact same look you're looking for. We've had situations. I remember this one that was in the Chelsea Gallery in New York City, where they actually had a 50-foot door that was 14 feet tall, steel door, so very heavy. Um, Dual pane, though, it wasn't triple pane, dual pane, but the motor was 50 feet away from the right jamb of the door system. So we literally carried the belt through steel tubes that came all the way up to the jam and then was able to go around. So we don't let design get in the way of, yes, there's always a solution, but that becomes a little bit more uh, costly when you're doing
Right.
things like that. So if you could just do simple things, like I will tell you that talking with Paul and your other supers at your company is if they're going to do a stacking door, carry the beam one stud bay farther over. So instead of using the jack studs and the king studs and then putting the beam on there, and then we put our motor in the stud bay to the left, carry the beam one stud farther, and that way that jack stud, those jack studs behind the jam are no longer considered structural because the structure is on the next jack studs with the king studs behind them. So now moving and cut, if you've got to cut out a little bit of wood or you got to do whatever in order to create the belt path, it's a non-issue. And structural engineers have no problem with it. Those simple things tend to be a really good thing. Now, I will say there's another one that says every home should be pre-wired. I honestly believe that if you're
Mhm.
building a house and you've got multi-slides going in, while people may be healthy today, and they may not need a motor, on a two panel operating. We always recommend that if you've got two or more operable panels, you should automate it. If you're not going to automate it, at least pre-wire for the automation because it's just wire. It's not that expensive to do it. But boy, talk about it being a trusted advisor for your customers that if at a
Right.
later time they've got hip replacement or they've got grandkids over and the grandkids can't open the doors and things like that. Just adding a motor by having things prepped where the cables are run, you're not pulling out a lot of drywall. You're just opening up a simple drywall piece. I will say you had mentioned access to the motors. There's a thing that we're working with a couple different door manufacturers where we're recommending that when they're having a pocketing door, that we're suggesting that we can actually put our motor on an FMS plate. It's basically a mounting plate, and our motor size drops from 7.5 inches down to 6 inches. Well, if you could extend the head track and the sill an extra 7 inches, 6 inches for the motor, and then you have your interlockers back there, you now have access to the motor without having to put an access cover on the outside or on the inside. Because if you ever do need to get to the motor, you could pull that fixed, the last panel that connects to the interlock of the pocket. You could pull that panel out and you can gain access to the motor that way. You can even mount the control box back there. All of that, it simplifies things. And we're only talking about an extra 7 inches of head track and sill. So, if we can work early, and as you had mentioned, our key theme is if people can send us over their door cut sheets, what they're thinking about, even if it's not the final one, because it's a conversation starter. If they send over a floor plan and an elevation view of the RO, the rough opening of the actual door system, then we've got our sales team here who are all technical, are able to look at that and be able to help spec in order to keep the costs down. And if we can move a stud one way or the other, or small minor things, it helps us just in the industry. It helps us overall cost of ownership for a home. It helps bring it down. I can't tell you the number of times I've shown up at a job site to do a job walk with our MMRs, and they're like, "PJ, there's no place to put the motor because I think maybe the framers are getting paid on how many pieces of wood they can shove into every stud bay, but they put 10 two bys in a stud bay, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, did they have extras? I mean, what were they thinking? So just a simple thing, a couple simple things up front. So, I encourage the architects, reach out to us because we'll help spec it in. In fact, our CAD drawers will actually take their drawing and drop it into their CADs so that they can see exactly how it's going to go in. They know how to spec it. They know where the simple things like, we need a 15 amp dedicated circuit. Why? So that we don't have any crosstalk with any of the other electronics in the home. All of our system, we're the only system in the US is UL 325. That's Underwriters Laboratory 325 for automated gate operators. We're the only company in the US that has spent the money, gone through 3 years worth of testing to actually get our system certified as a system. And we do that because we want the investment in it, but we also want to be that trusted advisor for the builders, and we want to be that trusted advisor for the architects and the designers. And through you, I learned, man, you don't even take a job unless you've got a designer, on staff, on retainer. Otherwise, it's going to be change order hell for you. So I look at it like that. That hey, bring us on early in the project, and we'll help simplify it. We will definitely help simplify it.
No, I love that advice. I think, as you what, going back to kind of earlier point you made, PJ, is that all of us are trying to seek better ways to communicate, to build systems and operations, and how we manage the process of this complicated thing we call construction. And in some cases, we make it harder than it has to be. But there are a lot of variables, and there's a lot of logistics. And when you're building these custom homes, there's just so many things that count for them. What we found is when we align ourselves with partners such as yourself that are involved in the planning and coordination, as you mentioned, we're looking for ways not only to deliver the best product for our client, but also how can we do this in a cost effective way? How can we pre-plan for
Oh,
things? You mentioned
yes.
the pre-wire, and overall, just being open, it isn't costly, and this is why it's a standard. But at the same token, if it was came down to budget, to your point, involving you early on allows us to plan for something that could be used as they're aging in place, or sell the home, or to come back later, and it's a very minimal expense to get in a pre-wire and plan for where the
Yep.
motor is going to be. And and that's where having trade partners such as yourself that can help us value engineer and really think through the process. And I love the framing comment because Mark LaLiberte, who we've worked with, he consults on a lot of our builds, and I think he winces all the time when he just thinks of that thermal energy loss from all that lumber that's just killing us on that R value. But
Right. And you really hit on a key point is that because our systems, because we try to sell standard systems, and by selling standard systems, we're able to pass on cost savings to you and other builders and other architects and industry partners out there. And as you know, we don't gouge anyone. I will tell you that there are people that'll roll up at a house at certain neighborhoods and things like that. It's almost like they add a zero to the end of it
yeah,
because
based on
they
zip
think
code.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, and they do so not necessarily because they're gouging price. It's because they think it's going to be a very complicated build and things like that. Our whole process is how do we simplify it? How do we make it so simple for people to be able to automate their doors? If we, what we have learned is that if you're between like 15 to 20% of what the cost of the door is, then automating it makes a lot of sense. But if you've got people who are marking it up an extra, 30% or 50%, and you're selling through multiple layers of people that you just sit there and you say to yourself, they're adding no value. Like door dealers. If I look at door dealers and I say to myself, now there are some door dealers out there, they're in it. They're in the thick of things. They're constantly on the job and doing things that they need to be doing. But then there are others that just look at the price and they just like, oh, well, that's just an add-on and I'll price it as high as I can in order because they think it's a headache. So I'm going to at least get as much money as I possibly can out of it versus, I've had that conversation with Paul that says, Paul, man, we do builder direct programs all the time. And because you think of it, right, you got the trade wars going on, you got tariffs, you've got all of this stuff that are happening out there. It's only going to increase the cost of building a home. My whole theme is how do I keep that cost down? And by looking at the drawings and looking at the floor plans and looking at the cut sheets, we have the ability to be able to influence that decision to save, because if you start flipping motors on their side, it adds 20%. If you start doing very exotic things, you end up doing a lot more costs and things. If we can be part of that process at the very beginning, we can keep the costs down. And to prevent any unnecessary risks or add-ons because people perceive it as being a risk. And by keeping it simple and keeping it basic, everybody understands it. Everyone knows this is easy. Don't get complicated. And you can sniff out a rat if somebody's like, doing the whole zip code thing. You can tell, hey, that's not a fair price. You need to bring that down. Um, so hopefully that came out okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And walk us through, I mean, the benefit. I mean, you touched on this where you speak about the weight, right? I mean, you mentioned that one I
Mhm.
think is Princeton, 12-foot high, triple pane. Mark LaLiberte's house specifically, he had triple pane, 8 by 9 feet. I mean, it's 800 pounds, right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
incredibly heavy glass. And so as we spoke, 40-foot wide slider at Modern Sunset, we've done some pretty complicated ones. Walk us through the motion detection. right? From a child safety
Well,
aspect. Walk us through,
sure.
can you stop at part way? Can you go full way? Just to explain to the audience, the benefit of automating these large multi-sliders and pivot
Oh,
doors.
easy. Easy. What's great about this is that we'll talk about multi slides first. Is that our controls, our wall switch controls that are mounted on the walls and things like that, can be integrated into home automation systems like Savant, Control 4, Crestron. All of those. Lutron. It doesn't matter. Even if you have your own homegrown like Josh, your AI assistant and things like that. So we can integrate our systems into all of those. But when you are operating a summit door, you have the convenience of being able to open it all the way or partially. And it could be simple, hey, press open, and you want the door to open a couple feet, press stop, the door stops. We can also set the system up, what we call as one of the features is party mode or auto open self close mode, where if you have a motion sensor on the inside, and a motion sensor on the outside, you could walk up to the door and the door will open very nicely out to 42 inches. When the door stops moving, you can literally reposition it. Maybe you want it to open 60 inches. You literally, for those 5 seconds that it's waiting, you could reposition the door and that becomes the new open. You don't need to know code. You don't need to know programming. You don't need to do any of that stuff. Very simple. But we've also done things, and we've heard from our customers. Customers say, like for example, there's a company out there that sells these things. They look like a torpedo, and they put them on the inside of the house and on the outside of the house, and they got this adjustable viewing window in it and stuff. And it's ugly. It's ugly as sin. So we've heard from our customers where they said, hey, we don't want to see it. So we've developed what we call the H1, which is a hidden motion sensor that goes literally into the soffit area that has this very small little button that goes on it that's paintable. So it blends into the house really nicely. And then we have our T1, our track mounted motion sensor that goes up inside the head track. So again, you're not looking at anything. It's not an albatross on the side of the house. Again, our customers are very discerning customers. They want excellence. They want elegance. They don't want a Walmart solution. Nothing against Walmart, but they don't want a grocery store door system. They want to have an elegant solution that's out there. So those are things. We have a touch screen. It's called the 9-in-1, but we just debuted at IBS our 12-in-1, which is very flat. I don't know if you got a chance to see that in the Quaker booth, but we displayed that, and the customer feedback on that has been fantastic because you can literally put a custom image. So I was on a call earlier today, and it's in Maui, and they have this very unique mahogany wood that they have inside their or a teak wood that they have inside their house, and they can take a photo of that teak wood, send it to us, and we can embed it onto a SD card, put it into our 12-in-1, and the screensaver looks just like the wood, just like the picture that they took. And then you paint the bezel that goes around the outside. We call that camouflage mode. So we've improved upon our systems every single year. It seems like every quarter, where we're getting enough feedback from our customers, and they're demanding for elegance, and we're just willing to give it to them because we have software engineers, we have electrical engineers, we have mechanical engineers, we have design engineers all on our staff. So we have no problem developing a specific solution around a customer's need and want, but to do so at a scalable level that isn't going to break the bank. So it's, the theme is give what the customer wants, listen to the customer, give them what they want, but don't gouge them. Give them a solution that's going to work every time, and then be ready on the spot. And I will say, we get two calls. In fact, I heard one of the calls today. The guy had gone out of his home. They had seasons where they shut down the house for a season. They go to a different home, and they just came back to that home. And it's in West Virginia, and he was telling me, he goes, PJ, the door's not working. It was working when I left, but it's not working. And we get this call every day. Yeah, there's two calls. And the one is, hey, it's not working. We said, can we go on FaceTime? Literally went on FaceTime with him. And I love FaceTime or Zoom, video conferencing, because then you can deal with it right then and there, right? So I'm
Hmm.
on this phone and I tell the guy, I said, can you zoom in a little bit where the handle is? I said, you see that little lever there? You mind flipping it? He flips the lever and because I told him press unlock and the door should manually operate because we use a clutch system in our motors. It's a signature click that you're listening for that disengages the motor. It allows the door to be free spinning. So so I'm talking to the guy and he goes, "Oh my God, it works." The lock was thrown. And it wasn't because he was throwing the lock. It's because he moved out of his home for the season, and his property manager, the very first thing they do when they go out to these homes is they lock all windows and doors because our systems have a built-in lock into them, and it meets pool code that have your secondary lock instead of putting the siren on the on or the mechanical device to lock your doors. Our motor acts as the secondary lock. So because we have an electromagnetic, not only a clutch but also a brake that acts as a lock. So he was so used to not locking his door because the door locks behind him. So that gives you that security. The other call that we get is I forgot my passcode to the exterior because they have so many homes and they don't even think about it. So we help
Yeah.
them reset their passcode and things like that. So, but getting back to some of the controls, we can do Bluetooth, we can do voice command now. You can actually talk to the door. That 12-in-1 that I was highlighting, we have a proximity sensor on it. In case you don't want to put an interior motion sensor on, you could put a proximity sensor, turn that feature onto the wall switch, where you wave your hand in front of the wall switch up to 2 inches to 24 inches, very customizable. You wave your hand in front of it, and that activates the door if you're in the auto open or self close mode. So we've really put a lot of thought into how do we keep the interior of the home looking elegant? How do we keep it? Nobody wants to see another switch. They want to, if they are going to have a switch, they want it to be purposeful. We don't, you'll see I've got this sign on here that we don't have big ass iPads on the wall. Our system is not used by iPads. We have very small, very sleek, very uh, uh, you know, camouflage type switches so that it blends into the walls and things like that. So, but the voice command thing, I got to tell you, that's the biggest feature that my wife uses in her office because here at the showroom, and I invite you, Brad, bring any of your customers by because we have door systems on display with automation attached to it. You're welcome to come so that they can get a feel. They walk the factory floor. They are actually going to talk to the people who are going to manufacture their systems. I mentioned that we're UL 325, which means we actually test and all of our systems are tested. And that safety feature that you were talking about is making sure that people don't get pinched in the door and things like that.
Hmm.
So we have the motion sensors is a secondary safety feature. The actual real safety feature is how you dial in the motor, and a certified installer knows how to do so that if there's an obstruction in the doorway, the door's supposed to stop and back up 6 inches and wait for the next command. So
So
there's lots of ways to run things.
it's amazing. I mean, just to your point, I think there's so much benefit when they can go see it operate right in the field or at your
Oh yeah.
showroom, as you mentioned. PJ, what's fascinating to me is you look back to, leaving, the aerospace industry. You're looking at 86 companies. I mean, glutton for punishment. Why construction? I mean, you're looking at Summit Automation. And again, credit to you to see what you've done. Like the partnership we have, the partnership you've had for builders around the country, customers who are raving fans, right? I mean, but it is a hard industry, as you've noticed. I mean, walk us through why you selected Summit and here you are today.
I will say it started when I was about 8 years old. So my dad was swung a hammer. And on Saturdays and Sundays we went to job sites. Saturdays was at his job site, and I was the guy who was carrying shingles up the ladder on apartment complexes 2 floors up. I was the guy. I was the gopher. Go for this, go for that kind of thing.
Yep.
When we poured concrete, I did all the bull work. I've done everything. These hands have been dirty. They've been dirty a lot, and but one thing about the construction industry is that when you step back and you see what you were able to build, and you see the enjoyment that the customers have on their face, I will tell you, that's a big deal. When Brenda and I, and this is going to hit really close to home, so bear with me for a second,
Mhm.
but when we were looking at companies, Brenda's mom was going through brain cancer, and she had surgery. Unfortunately, it wasn't successful. But as time progressed, she lost the ability to be able to use her home, to be able to open the windows, to use her doors, things like that. And this is before we had even talked about Summit. If Summit hadn't even been on our radar scope, I was still kicking the tires from the 86 companies, boiled it down to the dirty dozen. From there, I went and actually toured three of the facilities, and we were going to go down this path until I got a call from Walt, and Walt said, "No, you got to come check this out." And when I went there, and Brenda was visiting her mom, and I told her, I said, "I think, Brenda, I think God put this company in our path for a reason. We have the skill set, we have the wherewithal, we have the knowledge base. We can develop systems that are not just catering to the 1% of the one percenters, but to the masses. We can develop things where if somebody is like an ADU unit, people are aging in place, things like that, that how do we help them use their homes and stay in their homes longer? Mom, unfortunately, had to go into a nursing home and unbelievably rapidly declined in a matter of weeks. And I realized it was a miserable place. Now, I'm not saying all of them are miserable, and it was a very nice place, but you're not in your home. You're not surrounded by your loved ones 24/7.
Mhm.
And so when this opportunity came up, I just told Brenda, I said, I think we found it. I think we found the company that we should do. And our mission has not just been doing the big doors. So we're automating windows. We're automating hinge doors now. We're automating things so that people who are challenged, who have special needs, be able to operate inside their home, be able to live in their homes longer, so that they don't have to be forced to go someplace else. Having a smart home technology today is amazing, where you're able to talk to people, and you could call people, and you can call for help and things like that. Well, why not be able to talk to your doors and talk to your windows and be able to allow some fresh air in, even though you're not able to get up and do it yourself? Or if your children are coming over to visit, and you just don't feel well, and you just don't want to move the doors, or they're just heavy, you can now, your house is more inviting to your entire family, not just. And I hear this all the time from people who said, no, I'm healthy, and this is good exercise and things like that. I applaud them for it. I think it's fantastic. But there might be a day that you need a hip replaced, or you got to have a knee replaced, or you got to have, or your grandkids, they're young and they're coming over to the house. We have five, well, four and one on the way right now. And I couldn't imagine having some of these big doors without having automation added to them, just for the added convenience. And I will say, it is a luxury item. It's something that's a pretty wow factor, because it's not everybody has it. And when they have their buddies over, and their girlfriends over, and they're playing cards, or they're doing whatever, their swim party, and all of a sudden the door just self opens, or you're going to go out to the barbecue and the door opens and it closes behind you. Here in Arizona, it can be a little brutal to keep your door open all day long in the
Yeah.
summertime, but there are benefits of having it in auto open self close mode, party mode. And so our whole theme was, hey, how do we develop something that the masses can use as well, and to make sure that it's affordable? And we are the least expensive system that's out on the market today, by far. Least expensive system, but the most reliable and the most repeatable. And it is designed for success. So that's what we have.
PJ, I couldn't have said it better. And I will just, from a customer, advocate that I'm of your brand. I mean, we, as I've mentioned, on nearly every project, and so many people have followed our brand through social media and seen these posts go viral on our multi sliders and doors and windows. And you've been behind every single one of those. And there's been nothing but complete satisfaction from our customers. Again, from a price perspective, it's nothing. It really is so minimal in the overall cost of the home. I mean, it's really a no-brainer for our clients to take that option. And even as you go through value engineering, what you do on every home, this is something that always holds true and doesn't get VE'd out of the project. So it's a testament to you, PJ, what you built, and the customer service, the communication, second to none. I'm sure anyone listening, that's my sales pitch for you. For anyone listening, is make sure to reach out to PJ. And for those listening, something that's really important, PJ. I mean, how do they get a hold of you if they want to contact you? Whether they're local, national, on their complicated system they're going to be installing, and no matter the window brand or manufacturer, what are next steps for them?
Oh, it's easy. You can reach out to us at summitautomation.com or that info@summitautomation.com, or you can call our main number, which is 480-500-5468. They can also follow us on all of the social media things. We either have Summit Automation or Summit Automation USA. We're in all of the Twitter, the I have somebody who does that for me. Everybody's got to know their swim lane, so they got to stay in it. So, and social media is something that I'm not bad at, but I'm just not an expert at. But my team is very good at it, and but we're here. We're here to help, and we do work. We're not a 24/7 kind of sales office, but we do when people know us, we get a lot of calls even on the weekends and things like that, or at nights and things like that. And we're glad to help in case they're stuck in a situation, they forgot their passcode, or they just don't know that their doors are locked. We'd be happy to help them and get them on the line and do it. But yes, they can find us on the internet at summitautomation.com.
PJ, been incredible. Appreciate the friendship and relationship, and one of the best out there. So I know us at AFT are tremendously grateful for you.
Well, thank you very much, Brad, and shout out to everybody there, even Paul. Tell Paul I owe him a round of golf here pretty soon, okay?
I'll do that. Thanks, PJ.
Cheers.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.